As my wife was undergoing cancer and we're trying to figure out what the future brought for the property here, kids and I were trying to figure out a way to honor her, but we realized she was more than just cancer. It ended up being, kids and science and nature. And we said, okay, we'll use that as an inspiration to create a park.
There's elk on site and there's bison out here. Like, what am I missing? So then I get out here and come to the event, and it was this beautiful park and great mission. And so after the event was over, I was hooked, and I was like, hey, how can I get involved?
Fun thing I've learned about the conservation groups here is that there's no competition between them. It's always helping each other out.
It's like no matter what industry I've been around, there's always a frenemy. It just doesn't seem like that type of mentality exists around here.
Well, Jonathan, we're in Indiana. We're all very nice.
Yes, I see that.
You are listening to the NEI Pioneer Podcast, where we showcase and share authentic stories of Northeast Indiana. If you want to join our growing podcast community and stay up to date on our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to us if you're on YouTube or follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Just from the intro of this video, you might have noticed that we're not filming in our regular podcast studio. We were invited by John and Nick to join them on location at LC Nature Park. LC Nature Park is a unique nature preserve that is dedicated to preserving the beauty of native Indiana landscapes, as well as educating students of all ages on our natural heritage. In this conversation, Jonathan talks with John and Nick about how the park got started, unique aspects of their land, challenges that they faced, and what they have planned for the future. LC Nature Park really is a hidden gem of our region, and we're so glad that we got introduced to them and that we're able to tell their story here. So if you haven't heard about them, this is going to be the perfect episode for you. So let's jump into it.
Hello, welcome back to another NEI Pioneer Podcast. I'm Jonathan Sackett, hosting today on behalf of the NEI marketing team. Today, we are welcoming the guys from LC Nature Park, and we have John Brooks, who's the founder. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
And we have Nick Ladig, who is my favorite board member. Think TV.
Yes.
So thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. There's so much to talk about here at the park. I guess I'd like to start out with the name, LC Nature Park. How did that come about?
Well, we had a couple hundred acres as our family farm here, and we called it Lone Coyote Farm. And so when I went to name the park, I was going to name it that, and my daughter said, no, we have too many things named Lone Coyote. And I said, okay, then we'll just call it Loving Carol Nature Park.
Oh.
And Carol was my deceased wife, and so I used the same initials I would have otherwise, but basically...
You snuck it in there.
Snuck it in there, yes.
Well, okay, so would you mind giving us an overview of the park, exactly what you've got here, what you're hoping to accomplish with it, et cetera?
Sure, be happy to. We again had the family farm here, and we over time restored a lot of the farm fields to natural prairie grasses and prairie flowers. We introduced elk and bison to the property in 2011 and 12. And basically was our own private preserve where we were able to enjoy nature and watch the resurrection of some of the wildlife that is native to Indiana here by providing the habitat for them here. And so it was a lot of fun doing that. As my wife was undergoing cancer and we're trying to figure out what the future brought for the property here, we never really came up with a good decision on that until about a year after she died. My kids and I were trying to figure out a way to honor her. And in the first year, we spent a lot of time researching and also giving money for cancer research. But we realized she was more than just cancer, and actually went around and interviewed family and friends and said, okay, what do you remember as her passions? What was it that really turned her on? And it ended up being, kids and science and nature and cooking and a number of different things that we were able to identify. And said, okay, we'll use that as an inspiration to create a park. And so by having this now publicly owned nature park here, it can stay together as one parcel of property rather than being split up into numbers of different parcels, and we can share this with the community.
And how long did you guys have the animals before you decided to turn it into a park?
Well, we got the elk in 2011 and some bison in 2012, and so it was 2019 when we created the 501c3 for the park.
How many bison, how many elk are on the property?
Right now we have, I think, 30 bison. We had 4 calves in the past month. And so from the 26 adults we had, or 1-year-olds, we now have 30. With the elk, we're uncertain how many calves we have right now. We've discovered another one this morning, maybe even 2 this morning. The elk hide the calves pretty well, so it's pretty hard to know in the first few weeks of life whether they're actually there or not. So we have 18, 19 elk right now.
You know, when we were driving around, and then I want to get to you, Nick, but when we were driving around last week and you were showing me around, there was that one female that was kind of stomping at us. Do you remember this?
Oh, yes.
When we went up around. So did she have a calf with her? Or because I didn't see one.
No, that you're talking about the bison stomping at you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Pretty much everything is stomping at me today. My team is stomping at me, I think.
Well, we have basically no names for most of the animals, but there are certain either physical or behavioral characteristics that cause us to name an animal something, and that is Dakota, and she is our second oldest bison cow, and she has more personality than all the rest of the herd combined.
Okay.
So she will stomp at you and shake her head at you and do all that anytime she feels like it.
So it wasn't me.
No, not just you. Don't take it personal.
Okay. And Nick, can you talk a little bit about how you got involved in all this? Because it's talking with you, I just met you guys last week, and talking with you and I had a little bit of crossover in the CPG category in the past.
Yeah. So my, involvement here is in a board capacity, but I grew up in the area, Northeast Indiana, born and raised, and spent a lot of time in the adult beverage world. So first in the beer world, more recently in the whiskey world, working for a buddy's company that's based out of Indianapolis. And through some of my connections at the marquee fundraising event that happens every year here called Evening on the Prairie, 2 seasons ago, I got asked to come out and pour a s'mores old fashioned for like a dessert drink. So of course, friend of the gal that asked me, I said,
That sounds like a great way to meet somebody, by the way.
It was great. It's right downstairs, right by the fire. Anyway, so the gal that asked me, I was like, yeah, I'll be there. Kind of filed it away. And then the day of the event, like any good whiskey guy, I'm like, okay, where am I going and what am I doing today? So, I'd done hundreds of these things. So I Google the thing and LC Nature Park, what's that? I look it up and I see the website and I'm like, wait, this is like 10 minutes from my house. There's elk on site and there's bison out here. Like, what am I missing? So then I get out here and come to the event, and it was this beautiful park and really cool people and great mission. And so after the event was over, I was hooked, and I was like, hey, how can I get involved? So one thing led to another, and it was a year and a half ago. And first it was in development capacity, but then more formally on the board recently.
So you probably had some preconceived notion of what the park was, what it did. Did anything surprise you along the way once you got to know John, once you got to know the park?
There's, hundreds of, kind of restoration, preservation things around the Midwest in particular, whatever. So I just didn't expect it to be as, mature and I would say robust as it is. So that was the biggest thing is, the fact that there's a decade of wildlife that had been happening out here with the elk and bison that are, it wasn't just getting started. It wasn't this nascent thing. It had a lot of maturity to it. And, at the time there was 200 acres. At the dinner I was at, they were just announcing that they added on another 100. So just all this growth. And it was just a secret hidden treasure in my mind, because I feel relatively plugged into what's going on in the region at any time.
Yeah.
And to then see like this thing's 10 minutes from downtown and 5 minutes from where I at, and I never had heard of it. So
because we're technically in Allen County right now, aren't we?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was such a surprise. I got to tell you. So my team brought the idea to me to have you guys on the show, and they took a little field trip out here. I don't know how many people came, but a good handful at least. And they came back and they were so excited, and they're like, "Oh, you got to meet these guys. You got to meet them." And I was like, "Where is this? Like, I never heard of it." And I just think that what you guys are doing is such a wonderful thing, predominantly from an educational standpoint. Can you talk a little bit about, because I think you guys do some things with junior achievement or with the school systems, is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we do a lot with the school systems. And in fact, this past spring, we've put together a joint curriculum with all the major school systems in Allen County. So we could not only send educational materials to them before they come visit, but they can get educated on that, and then it fits their curriculum. They come out here, they have a visit, and then we send some follow-up materials after that. So we're just kicking that off. But over time, when we first opened up, it was COVID. And so the only groups that we had out here were pretty much homeschoolers. because there were units that were always together anyways. They were outside. This building was not complete at that time. And so we expanded that then into the public schools as soon as they started opening up for field trips and for all that.
Wow.
And we've tried to collaborate with a lot of other different groups too, whether it's Boys and Girls Club, whether it's Boy Scouts, you name it, just anyone we can reach out to, and in particular get kids out here so we can show them the beauty of what Indiana's really like. You know, that I love eating corn and I'm glad we have soybeans here, but it's really pretty when you don't have just cornfields and bean fields.
Well, okay, so let's talk about plants now. Because one of the things that I did learn is, I asked you last week, I said, well, wait a minute, do you guys grow the corn here? And you said, no, you only use it as a treat.
Yes, that, it's a very good question.
I actually remember this stuff. Did you guys believe it? It's
So-
the energy drink, I think.
The reason we feed the bison a little bit of corn, and it's less than a cup per animal a day, and it's not necessarily even every day, but they treat it as candy. And so when we have an escapee, someone either gets pushed out or someone left a gate open or whatever reason an animal's outside the enclosure, it's the way to get them back in. They think it's candy, and so we put a little on the ground and take the bucket and walk towards the gate, and they will follow you anywhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, can you hand feed any of the animals? You personally?
I personally can hand feed a couple of the animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never tried.
Okay.
I-
So
we-
Nick
we-
and I
we-
get stomped at, you get to feed the animals. This sounds...
We don't like to do that. Okay, we're trying to keep them unhabituated to humans
Okay.
as much as we can. So they're wild out there. Yes, they're accustomed to visitors, but as far as being handled, we don't do that.
Okay. And, you said, was it 4 elk or 4 bison that were just recently born on the property?
4 bison
Four
and
bison.
2 to 3
And
elk right
possibly
now.
2. Okay. We were talking about this, that the elk actually cover their young in grass. Is that right?
Well, they don't cover them. They put them down in the tall grass just like a deer does.
Okay.
And the adult then will walk off and graze and eat or browse, depending on the species. And they'll keep an eye on the animal from a distance. And if someone something starts getting too close, they'll move back towards that and try to chase them off.
Wow.
There. Whereas a bison, when they have a calf, a bison calf stays with the mom the entire time.
Okay.
They're up walking around within 2 hours easily.
Really?
Much less than that. They can run in about 3 hours.
How much does a bison weigh at birth?
About 40 to 50 pounds.
And an elk?
I'm guessing 25 to 30,
Really?
25 maybe.
Okay, so how much of this did you know before you got into all this?
I didn't know any of this. Okay.
Nothing?
Nothing, no. It's just,
Self-taught or?
well, not self-taught. I guess if you want to consider having a lot of experts out here and asking them questions, self-taught, I guess is self-taught.
Yeah.
But reading and having experts out here. I tell you, Jonathan, it's so much fun having experts out here. Every time someone comes out, I don't care if it's a geologist, biologist, anyone, you learn so much from, every time. And it's just been very rewarding for me to be able to do that.
That's awesome. My team says the same thing about me.
I bet they do.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a no. Okay, so then here's the next question. So when we were talking about the plants, right?
Yep.
So you got 100 extra acres, and some of that was farmland, or most of it, right?
Most of it was 30 acres of woodland.
And then do we have to be careful about the certain invasive plants, or?
The entire park has an issue with invasive plants. All of Indiana has an issue with invasive plants. Anything from honeysuckle, garlic mustard, reed canary grass, autumn olive, all sorts of plants that are invasives that were brought from other places in the world. And because they don't have their natural predators, meaning either bugs that eat it or animals that eat it, that type of thing, they can take over pretty quickly. And so we have several employees that spend most of their time, dealing with invasive plants.
Constantly worried about plants, what they're eating. And then what about, there's got to be coyotes or something out here in 200 acres, right?
Certainly, there are coyotes. We see them fairly frequently. We have 5 or 6 fox dens on the property, 1 or 2 families, depending on the year, and they'll move their kits around based on what kind of threat they feel for each den. But so we have predators. In life, if there's something to eat, someone's going to come along and eat it, and then something else is going to come along to eat that individual.
Yeah.
So if you give them
That's
habitat,
a safe way to phrase it, but okay.
if you have habitat, then you will end up having a nice variety of species of the entire food chain.
Okay.
So yeah, it's fun.
Wow. All right. So what were the challenges? So you make a dedication to your wife, and I'm sorry to hear that, but the product of it was a beautiful park, right? So you're going through this decision. What was standing in your way? So you want to make an official park, file the C3 or C6, I can't remember what you said. But as you're filing all that and doing this, what was the biggest barrier? Because I would assume it would be, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know how to.
Yep. You're absolutely right. My ignorance was the biggest barrier. Okay, trying to learn what we had to do to be able to create this. And we had other, milestones that had to happen to be able to make it accessible to the public. For instance, this building here is the education center. When I initially started the idea of the park, we didn't have very good access to the park. And by being able to buy this 12 acres right here where this bank barn is, we were able to provide access directly off of Avoit Road. And so that was a hurdle that we had to overcome to be able to provide more access to people here. But again, it was my ignorance. I didn't know what was involved. And so it's been fun learning how to do that. There were times it wasn't quite so much fun, but for the most part, it's been a great experience.
Well, especially because we've been talking with you guys now about holding a function out here with you. So hopefully that goes through as well. So Nick, tell me, as you were going through this process and you wanted to join in because you saw this was something pretty neat and something that you could lend your expertise to, how did you go about after you talked with John and you said, hey, yeah, I'd be interested in helping out? How did that process work?
It was pretty quick. They were like, "Where do you want to be?" No, I'm joking. But
Here, it was pretty quick.
Here, take this corn out and feed somebody.
What I do and what I've generally done is help smaller businesses scale and help with strategy and business development. Sales marketing is kind of like where my background goes. So I saw that as a very similar thing that I thought I could do. The park was looking for more awareness in the region. And potentially help with access to capital, recruiting people to contribute to the cause, whether that be corporate or individuals or, whatever fun events you could do to raise money. And then, potentially some over the rainbow planning stuff too, given that, I jumped in at year 3.5 or whatever and was like, where's this thing? It's still very entrepreneurial, I would say, as the business continues to develop. So those were the things that attracted me, I think, and also where I was like, oh, I think I can actually help, not just, fill another seat and say I volunteered somewhere.
Yeah. So what do you think is the next, and this might be a trick question, but what do you think is the next business frontier for the park?
The park eventually has to get to like some level of self-sustainability, I would say. So, and if we do all those other things, continue to grow it and develop it and get, more partnerships and people to contribute to the cause. And, but, ultimately, nonprofit doesn't equal don't make money.
Right.
Nonprofit means, it's a different tax status or whatever. So the ability for the park to continue to grow and flourish and, fund its future mission, I think would be the next kind of hurdle. Obviously there's steps within that plan, but that would be the big kind of.
Well, it's surprising to me because the number of people that we've talked to about the park, there's like this disbelief that this exists here even, and when we're talking to people about it and we're showing them your materials and your website, they just seem to have a hard time believing that would be in Indiana of all places. So did you guys get any pushback, governmental pushback or anything like that because of hazards or any pushback at all about making this into an official park?
Not so much about making it into a park. For our educational center, there was some pushback in terms of zoning, not to upset neighbors, because this place is not a reception hall. We're not having weddings, we're not having receptions, that kind of thing here. And certainly respect that. It doesn't fit our mission anyways, to have those things. But certainly there were some regulatory things that had to be made very clear and agreed to be able to have this center in particular.
Did any of your relationships from your other businesses help?
I think the reputation of doing what you say you're going to do and saying what you're going to do helped quite a bit.
Did any of your business, so you guys actually solicited business or got money from old partners of yours, I would assume?
To start the park?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, The park, my family and I were the initial investors in the park, okay, in terms of the donations that were given to be able to create the park, including the land that's here too. And over time, as Nick said, we have to continue to grow the funding sources that are out there so that we can make it more self-sustainable than relying on the family. And it's come a long ways in the last 5 years to be able to do that. Do I ask friends and other associates for money? I do not. Okay, I'm very reluctant to do that. I just think that's a good way of having a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
Do they give? Yes, they do. They give very generously, and we've been so appreciative and so blessed to have the support that we've had from the community here, both financially and in other terms.
Yeah. I think, really with us, at NEI, I think every day is a new surprise for us just because, I'm not from here. I moved here from Chicago. I don't know if you can tell. But what I found is that the people here are really willing to help each other. I mean, we've seen that in all of the businesses, all of the shows that we've done so far. It's a very selfless attitude that people have around here. Can you talk a little bit about how the community has helped you out?
We would not be here if it hadn't been for the help of the other conservation groups in the area. The advice that they gave me, Little River Wetlands and Acres Inc. and the Nature Conservancy, they've all been really, really helpful in giving us advice on what to do and what not to do to try to make this place successful. And a big shout out to all of them, especially the Little River Wetlands. They were fantastic in terms of helping me understand what had to happen and what you should not be doing to be able to make this successful here.
There's always pitfalls in any business, in
Right.
anything that you're trying to start. You had a record of history of doing business anyway, so I mean, I would assume you could apply a lot of that to what you were doing here, or was this just a complete fresh start for you?
Well, I think past business experience certainly helped in terms of trying to figure out, okay, how do you go about this, and how do you make the operations happen, and how do you market the park, all those things. So, yeah, I think past business experience certainly helped with all that. But on the other hand, it's a whole different deal here. It's not like the customer's paying for it necessarily. Okay, in this case, we have to have outside support, whether it's grants, sponsorships, individual gifts, all that. We have to have that, and so it is different than me trying to sell you a widget and you pay me money for the widget. In this case, it's a third party that's basically providing the product for your benefit rather than you.
Yeah.
There's a nice duality here, though, that generally the product, the experience, we haven't brought anyone out, whether it's a potential visitor or just Joe Q Public, that doesn't come out and be like, oh my gosh, this is great. I love this. I didn't know this was here. So that makes it really easy when they're like, hey, your job is to get visitors here. And then I just get them here, and then they're wowed by the experience and what's been built. Yeah. But the challenge to that is it's not a 24/7 gate access where people can come in and go as they please because of the nature of the wildlife that's here and the way the business, the nonprofit operations run. So there is that challenge of scheduling people to come out versus just saying, hey, everybody, here's a billboard on 69, 2 minutes down the road, come as you please. So it's a challenge. Yeah. But ultimately, when you get them on site, it's always been a home run. So that makes it really easy as far as that goes.
It's worked out pretty well that way. One thing that has been a challenge is, like any business that's young and trying to grow, trying to balance what you're capable of doing with the awareness and marketing that you want to do at the same time. Mm-hmm. Especially with the animals, it's like, okay, how many guests can we have here? How many visitors can we have that aren't going to provide shock to the animals and perhaps hurt them in terms of their health or their behavior? And so that was just one of the questions that we had here. So same thing with the trails. How much traffic can the trails take before it becomes detrimental to the health of the trail? So we've been trying to balance and learn that as we get older and more mature.
Hi, everyone. We want to take a quick moment to shout out our podcast sponsors. Now, first, you might be wondering who I am, so let me introduce myself. I am Hannah Hannigan, and normally I'm behind the camera as the videographer, but today I wanted to be in front of the camera to shout out the people who made this podcast possible. Barrett McNagny and Sweetwater Sound are the two sponsors of our podcast, and they're both located in Northeast Indiana. If you don't already know who they are, let me introduce them to you. We're going to start with Barrett McNagny. As Fort Wayne has grown, the Barrett Law Firm has grown with it. Founded in 1876, Barrett McNagny is one of the oldest law partnerships in Indiana, and it's among one of the largest just in Northeast Indiana. They have the breadth of experience across a wide range of practice areas to provide you trusted legal counsel where and when you need it. And Sweetwater is actually the one we were able to purchase most of our audio and video gear from to make this podcast. So if you like how this podcast sounds or how it looks, be sure to check them out. Sweetwater, the nation's largest, and I would also add friendliest destination for music gear, is also your one-stop shop for all things podcasting. From audio interfaces, recording software, mixers, microphones, cameras, and lighting, Sweetwater has everything to get your podcast up and running. Enjoy personalized gear advice from their dedicated team of sales engineers, as well as free technical support to get your podcast connected and up and running. Really, what's not to love about that? So whether you already have a following or you're still chasing the next big thing, Sweetwater is going to be the ones to help you create a podcast that everyone will be talking about. So if you're interested in either of these companies, be sure to check out the links in our description. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
I'd like to go back to something you said, Jonathan. You talked about how people are so willing to help others here. And that's one fun thing I've learned about the conservation groups here, is that there's no competition between them. It's always helping each other out. And if there's a service or an issue that we can't provide here and Acres can do a better job of it, or Little River Wetland can do a better job, or any of the other agencies out there, we call them up and say, hey, this is an opportunity, would you like it? And they do that same thing for us. And so we've, I think between the 3 or 4 major conservation groups here, done a pretty good job of trying to fill these niches in the entire mission that we all share together, but each of us does it in a different way. And I think it really provides a benefit and value to Northeast Indiana, the communities in Northeast Indiana, to do that.
What are the other conservation groups? You listed them, but I'm not familiar with them.
Okay, well, Acres Inc., they do a lot of conservation of different properties.
We'll make sure to link to them.
Yeah,
So.
okay, good. A lot of conservation of properties around there, but they don't provide a lot of education. Okay, Little River Wetland does wetlands, and they have a lot of property. They own 2 parcels just across the river over here, and they hold the conservation easement for much of this property here also, but they do wetland education and wetland conservation. Our park, LC Nature Park, focuses more on woodlands and prairie lands and education. So between all 3 of them, you're covering quite a bit of the breadth of the nature conservancy world out there.
Yeah,
So,
you know, it's fascinating because coming from where I came from, which is New York and Chicago, there's a lot of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term frenemy. It seems like no matter what industry I've been around, there's always a frenemy. And I haven't heard that term once, and I've been with NEI now 2 years. It just doesn't seem like that type of mentality exists around here. Because they could look, I mean, you could be looked at as competition to so many different things, but it doesn't feel like they're looking at it that way.
well, Jonathan, we're in Indiana. We're all very nice.
Yes, I see that. and so is Nick.
Yeah,
Nick's
I
nice.
think
But
I think it's Midwestern. I know Chicago's in the
Midwestern, yeah.
Midwest, but that's,
Chicago's a different
yeah,
planet
exactly.
of the Midwest, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Right.
the one thing that I've told people since I moved here is if you stand on a street corner and you look confused, which happens to me a lot, people will say, "Can I help you find something?"
Yeah.
They will come up to you and say that. If you do that in Chicago or New York and you look confused, they don't care. So
Come rob you.
avoid you. Yeah.
you might lose your wallet if you look confused. You have to look like you're mad and you don't have time for
Well, I
anybody.
feel like I grew up and it was like if you're driving down the road and someone has a flat tire on the side of the road, it was just natural to stop and see if they needed help. You know, this is before cell phones.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of, hey, do you have a phone? Is everything cool? And then they'll send you on your way or whatever. But that was a very natural native thing to do growing up around
But
here.
we've seen that time and time again on the show. No, there's a lot of positivity here, and what's it called, the Midwest work ethic that keeps coming up. So anyway, let's get back to you, John. So you built this out. because 10 minutes ago I was 30 feet from some enormous animals. Like, is that what you set out to do, to get us closer to the animals? Because I'm assuming, you're talking about challenges. You got to be careful what they eat. You got to be careful if there's any predatory animals, particularly around the young ones. But there's got to be nooks and crannies in this park that, the people coming through might not be able to see anything. Does that ever happen, or isn't the layout such that that wouldn't happen?
No, absolutely. There's times people come through and can hardly find any animals.
Yeah, I'm taking that from Jurassic Park, by the way.
Yeah, especially because this time of year, the grasses are so tall, and everything's so flush in the woods. You can't see through the woods, or you can't see into the woods. And so, if it's a hot day and the sun's beating down, and the flies might be a problem, they all go back in the woods and hide. And so there are times you can have visitors out there and they don't see any animals. We're going to have to expand our trail system to be able to provide more access with a new area that we've purchased and are restoring right now, because they could be in part of that and be a half mile away.
I would add though that there's I get hung up on the animals too, because I've never seen an elk this close in my life.
Yeah.
And, that was a very sexy thing out here, but like...
Well, you can't... I got to tell you, it's the first time I've been that close, and I had no idea they were that big.
Yeah.
I mean, you always... maybe it's my own naivete, but I always thought, you see a deer... I grew up in Wisconsin. You see deer. I didn't think the elk were that much bigger. They tower over a deer.
Yeah, but the point being that... it's a hook for me. Admittedly, I use it all the time. I'm like, there's bison and elk. You got to come see them. But there's so much more out here too in the the history of this wetland, or the valley. I'm going to butcher it, but how it was an old portage for Native Americans back in the day from Fort Wayne to the Wabash River on to the Mississippi or whatever. So like, there's a lot more education to be had. So the days that those animals are hiding in the shade, that's an opportunity to learn about the other stuff, in my opinion, because I've learned about invasive garlic mustard that I didn't know about. And now I see it on my property and I'm pissed off, and it's like...
Invasive garlic mustard.
Yeah.
Sounds like a terrible dish.
I know, and I love garlic and mustard, but
you can make a pesto out of it, but I haven't done that.
Yeah. So. There's a lot more than the animals, is the point being. So, but it is, one of the most memorable things there's elk near Fort Wayne. Cool. But like, there's a lot of other stuff out here too. So.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's been interesting since we first bought our property and built our house and moved out here. I've learned so much about the area that I didn't have any idea about. Maumee Torrent is something I'd never heard about, and what created the Little River Valley. This was all Miami Nation property here, one of the reserves. And so there are a lot of stone points and stone tools that have been found by people in the past, and they've loaned their collections to us. So we have those here, tools from 10,000 years ago. Wow. They're here from the property. So as Nick says, there's the education you get is way beyond just the elk and the bison, or even the diversity of plants that we have here. The education is of showing the richness, and both in terms of culture and natural beauty, that Northeast Indiana has.
Yeah. Well, in showing my lack of knowledge, or a little bit of knowledge, when you were showing me around last week, I was talking about the Cames and the Drumlins, right? So I didn't know you guys had this kind of topography out here, because there's some steep hills. So as we were going around, you were pointing out some apple plant or something.
Oh, Mayapples.
Mayapples. Yes.
Mayapple. All right, well, close enough. Mayaples. We'll get that one in post. But again, I didn't know all of the plants. I didn't know that you had this type of topography, just because I figured it was flat, of course, and you could look and see 2 miles out, but that's not the case.
Not the case at all, no. But with the topography and the fact that there's a sand dune here, like there's a Fox Island and some other places up and down the Little River Valley, provides a lot of diversity. Soils determine what kind of plants are going to grow, and plants determine what kind of bugs, and that determines what kind of birds and rodents, and it just right on up the food chain based on the soils that you have in the particular area.
That's the ecosystem.
Yes.
And there's a couple quick things I want to get through before I get into the rapid fire. But and I think the team probably got some shots of this, but there is a structure that I'm looking at right now, and I think those are the antlers all from one animal. Is that true?
Our antler tree over here in the corner of the Ed Center all came from Fred. and Fred's our oldest elk bull, and I started collecting his antlers at age 3 for him, and he is now, this month, will be turning 15. And so we have collected antlers every year from him. I've labeled them, kept track of them, and we put them on our antler tree. And we'll be adding another section before long for his antlers from last year.
Yeah, I was surprised at how much do those things weigh?
They're close to 25, 30 pounds a pair,
Wow.
kind of thing. So, and they can weigh even heavier than that. But you can imagine having that on your head for 6 months a year.
No,
I can't either.
I have no idea what you're talking about. And then, I had asked Nick, from a business standpoint, what he thought the next frontier is. And as, again, the average person isn't going to understand what it requires to create an experience like this, because I had no idea. There's an interdependence of the parts. So you've got plants, you've got rodents, you might have intrusive animals, right? What is the next frontier for you, or what is the next challenge that you think you're going to have to overcome for the park?
I think we have to continue to grow awareness of the park, and we can handle more people than what we've had out here. I want to give a shout out to our volunteer staff who allows us to have that growth, because we don't have enough park staff to do that. So our volunteers have been incredibly helpful and necessary to be able to provide the product that we're able to provide out here. But right now we're trying to put together a long-range plan. As Nick said, we added about 100 acres on about a year and a half ago, and we're in the process of restoring that. And part of that question on the long-range plan is, okay, well, how are we going to actually utilize some of it? We know what we're doing with part of it. We're extending the forage area for the animals and allowing them access to that over time. But for the balance of it, we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best use of the additional property that we're getting there? So that's one of the big challenges we have coming up. It's also one of the great opportunities we have.
Yeah.
And so we're excited about that, being able to do that. Trying to, as a adolescent, not-for-profit, okay, we're not a baby anymore, but we're an adolescent, trying to learn what works best for our community, okay, and what services and education we can provide that works best for them. And so part of it is just trying something, seeing if it works, seeing if it takes hold, or saying, okay, this is not the best use of our resources, and it's not providing the best product or service for our community. Let's try something different.
Yeah.
And so it's a learning process as we go. So if you look at what the big challenges are, it's like, okay, how quickly and well are we learning what we can do best?
Yeah. So is there a moment when you think about the park? Obviously, it's in a dedication to your wife, which is beautiful.
Well, I do want to clarify that. She was the inspiration. The park is not about my wife.
Okay.
Okay. The park was inspired by her passions.
Yeah.
But the park is about trying to bring people out to see the beauty and awe of nature in Northeast Indiana.
And then, is there a moment or two that you felt were the most satisfying, where you said, oh, like, this is working, or this is just beautiful and I have to share this? Is there anything that you can think of that?
There have been a number of them, but I think one really noteworthy was first week or two of summer camp we had when we first started summer camp. And come up here and watch the kids sunburn, mosquito bitten, dirty, sweaty, and having so much fun after 6 hours of being out in nature. And that is really satisfying.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I like, you know how you lit up just now
I know,
when you were talking?
I know.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure, because we
I
got it on
try to make sure.
We got it on camera, John.
I know.
Yeah.
And then, so you guys these guys didn't believe me. You have a tent set up out there.
Yes.
There's I don't think they saw it. So there was a tent.
They got an
They saw it.
abbreviated tour that day because it was pretty chilly and wet.
Yeah, but
okay.
They saw the tent. So
Yeah, so there's a fire pit there. So what do you use that for?
we use that for different events. First of all, the tent's about halfway on the normal hike, normal guided hike that we have here. So if it starts to rain, mosquitoes, you name it, need a place to just sit down, it's a rest stop. Okay, if you need to do that. But we also have events out there, wine in the woods. We'll have fire down there and serve up wine and enjoy the outdoors for an evening kind of event down there. We sometimes have small meetings that are held down there for people that are really interested in the conservation and maybe have some other subjects to talk about.
Okay. And then, so we're going to get into the rapid wrap-up questions, where it's just like a rapid fire of things that we think that our audience would want to know. Is there anything else that you think that we haven't covered that you'd want to share about the park, or about what you love about it the best? Any of that?
I just love coming out here and hearing the silence of most man-made noises, and hearing the great volume of natural noises that are here, and watching them and seeing how things come alive if you just sit there for a little while.
That fly just had to,
He hadn't given up.
For example.
Yes,
Right.
nature.
Yeah, it's
Natural life.
But I just think it's so beautiful, and it's such an honor to be here with you guys, really. This park, I think, is very important, because I think a lot of people, we're in charge of marketing the region, the 11-county Northeast Indiana region, and this is such a pivotal thing just because it's so unexpected, and we do FAM tours, so we're talking about bringing people through here with you now. So anything that we can do to help, we'd love to work with you guys, to continue to work with you. And I can't thank you enough for being on the show.
It's a big honor to be on the show. Thank you for that. And if you want to help us increase awareness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I would say people that, I'm the shameless development guy. So if people want to get involved, but, reach out, let's get them out here on site, let them see it. Because, it is talk about diversity in the region. We have a world-class children's zoo, and we have the Acres Land Trust, and all these other amazing experiences that exist. But this is different and unique unto itself. And I too find it very enriching to come out on site and get to experience what's built here. So people want to come out and get involved, we'd love to show them off. Don, he's a way better tour guide than I am. I'm working.
Just ask him. He'll tell you. So the people that are going to partake, whether they're just going to come here and take a tour with you, or if they want to volunteer their time, there's four groups of people that you'd want to talk to. So what would you want to say to the people who want to come out and be a part of this in any way, shape, or form, whether it's volunteering, whether it's taking the tour? What would you tell them?
If someone wants to get involved, the best way is to check the website. We use that for opportunities for scheduling visits, for volunteering, and then for reaching out for tours, or to get involved in a bigger way, whether that's individually or corporately, if they're behind the passion.
We have guided tours here only. We don't allow people to walk just willy-nilly around the park, because we have, first of all, big animals, and we don't want the animals being spooked, and we don't want the people being spooked either by the big animals.
Yeah.
But the biggest benefit is that all the docents, all the guides that we have, are very knowledgeable about all the different plants and the different animals and the different geology that's out here. And if I were to walk out here without knowing any of it, I would miss so much. And my visit would be much, much richer if I had someone along that would be able to educate me as I went.
It's very unique to see. I'm looking at a sign right now that says, "Please touch." And I just like that type of involvement from a learning standpoint. And last week, when you and I were going through the park, I remember I asked you, I said, "Hey, so do you get any," it's not like your houses are on top of each other here by any means, but I said, "Did your neighbors ever say anything, or is there ever a problem?" And you said, "No, because A, I sold them the land, and B, that's the vet right there," when you pointed at the house right here.
Right.
I thought, so you almost have an on-site vet.
Yes, he certainly, he and his family, they watch out for the animals when they're near that house in particular. So, and if there's a question we have, we give him a call, and he helps us figure out the right answer.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, I love
Works
it.
out well.
Favorite species or animal in particular on the property?
Favorite species to me is great white trillium, the flower that we have every spring for about 10 days that covers the dune and makes it look like paradise.
How long does that last?
About 10 days.
And do you prefer hosting kids camps or adult events?
I prefer hosting anyone who really is curious about our nature and Indiana.
Good answer. That's great. And your top must-do thing in Northeast Indiana, aside from the park?
Mine's get out in a good day of lake and camping. And I grew up in Indiana, has a pretty decent DNR system, and I grew up in Chain of Lakes, and now we go to Pokagon a lot. So mine for outsiders is like, hey, go enjoy one of these lakes, get a campsite, have a fire, make the s'mores, do the thing, and just enjoy it. See, we don't have mountains and rivers and all this stuff, but we have some amazing sunrises and sunsets in Indiana.
So, and then the final question that we have for both of you is, do you have a favorite spot in particular on the property?
I do. My favorite spot is on top of the dune where all the trillium are.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for up here. I like being on this deck in the evening hours when the sun's setting and just seeing kind of everything. And a lot of times you can see the bison. I more often see the bison than the elk, but just be able to look out and see it and think, wow, that's how it used to be out here. Like, that's crazy. So I'm a sucker for sitting on the deck.
It is beautiful. Even today in the rain, it's working out. Mm-hmm. So you guys, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. So is there any last things that you guys wanted to promote?
I just think Northeast Indiana has so many opportunities for people. And, we want to be part of that, and I think we are now. I think LC Nature Park is part of that. But there's so many other great things to do in Northeast Indiana, besides, Nick talking about the state parks and the lakes and that type of thing. Yep. Both from a natural and cultural perspective, Northeast Indiana offers an awful lot.
Yep.
That's awesome.
I would agree. And thanks to the partnership for doing this and highlighting some of them. I think that there's a lot of, the exciting side of my business is there's this cool business development going on, but that's like even more reason that I want to make sure that there's some protected stuff like in this so that not every field turns into, the next industrial park or something. So
yeah. we got to do both, but
yeah.
I got to tell you, it's been an honor meeting you guys and thank you for all you do. And you are now going to be working with my marketing team. So we're going to be working together, and we're going to figure this out. But congratulations on all of the success. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor being on the show and being able to share, what we've been doing out here. But we certainly want to be part of your marketing team. We want to help you do what is your mission.
Yeah. These guys are great. I can't say enough about them. And they'll tell you some great things about me if you want to hear it.
Yeah, thanks.
As we get a collective thumbs down from the marketing team. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Please subscribe, like, share the videos. Remember, we are on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And on behalf of myself, Jonathan Sackett, and on behalf of the NEI marketing team and our new friends here at LC, thank you again for joining us, and please share the show.